Excited about shows below at all.
I have a question. So as like, because we're talking about space age, we're talking about stuff like this. I know that like the common criticism that like sci-fi has specifically is that like ideas are over-explained and like concepts and theories and the physics and the science. Would you say that like how would you compare it to his over-explanation in like the Winds of Truth? Would you say it's a similar kind of quality?
Yeah. At this point now, I'm concerned that the fastest in light travel is going to be so over-explained that I don't care, and then it just becomes he's trying to like create his own science, and it's not nearly as interesting as just like letting me envision things. Like, give me the sense of wonder. Let me, as the reader, be trusted to be intelligent and figure things out, rather than like you don't have to explain every single thing on the page. And there's a lot of good science fiction that like doesn't just explain, it just shows.
Yeah.
More in like film, like Interstellar, I think does a really good job of that, like with like the wormhole sequence and traveling through that. There's a show called Scavenger's Reign that I absolutely love. It's animated, and it takes place on an alien planet. It's basically survival amongst these survivors from a shipwreck. And it's completely different from anything on Earth as far as like the biomes and the creatures and the life forms. And obviously nothing is explained. You're just thrown into it with the characters. And they have to survive, and you're just kind of along with the journey. And I don't question at all, like, how do these animals work? How does this whole ecosystem work? I don't care. It's awesome. It just shows how it progresses, and I like being just kind of brought along for the journey without having to understand everything.
Yeah, the thing with explaining a concept or explaining an idea for a reader is that you risk the reader not agreeing with you on things.
And it becomes too clinical.
It becomes too clinical, and you're giving a reader an opportunity to not suspend his belief, which is necessary for you to enjoy a fiction novel.
Yeah, you mentioned sci-fi has a tendency to over-explain things. I would definitely say that's more of a trait of hard sci-fi than soft sci-fi.
What constitutes a soft sci-fi? Because I've heard many different.
Well, it could be pretty subjective, just like hard magic versus soft magic to the individual. But essentially, like Andy Weir's The Martian is a great example of hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
Where the science behind what's happening plays an integral role to the plot and is often explained of what he's doing, the scientific principles behind that, and it's a vital part of the plot. A great example of soft sci-fi would be like Star Trek. Yeah, there's sci-fi, there's some technical babble, but the story isn't really focused behind the science, but the characters, what they're experiencing, and the things that they come across and the challenges they have to overcome. Like, the technical side of things isn't really there, except where, it kind of fits the dialogue and plot, where they throw some technical babble in, but you don't really need to understand it.
Yeah. It's like those, like Grey's Anatomy. I know it's not sci-fi, but it's like, no one cares about the gobbledygook that you say unless you physically have that issue, whatever they're talking about.
How else would you have time for the doctors hooking up with each other?
hooking up with a dead ghost of their former fiance, and that's what I did so hard.
Gosh.
Yeah, but if you are look for like sci-fi that doesn't, over-explain things. Personally, I found the Inhibitors trilogy that I've been reading by Alistair Reynolds. It's kind of soft/hardish. There is some, hard sci-fi elements to it, but it's definitely more about what's happening in the story than the science behind it. For me, it's about a 3 to 3.5. Like, it's good, it's decent, I'm enjoying it, but it's not great, amazing. But The Expanse is another really great series. And what I love about The Expanse is that the science in The Expanse is very realistic and plausible. Like, there's a lot of sci-fi where, again, going back to Star Trek, so much of the tech there is like, it's just impossible. Like, warp drive, that's never going to happen. The replicators, beaming down the planet. This stuff, that's there for plot convenience, nothing else. It's not realistic technology. But in The Expanse, the technology in The Expanse, in the books and TV show, is very realistic and plausible from what we understand of the laws of physics in the universe, which I really like about. We see that in the Inhibitor trilogy as well. there's no fashion in like travel. Often it references the fact that, oh, well, you know, it's 5 years ship time, it's going to be 20 years real time to get there,
Right.
and putting them in, you know, like cryogenic sleep and stuff on their journey to the next world, and then when they get there, they wake up and do their thing, right?
So has anyone read like 3 Body Problems?
I read
That's
the first
definitely hard science.
That is hard science.
I read
was
the
about
first
to
one.
ask.
I
Yeah.
read the book, it's on my list.
Yeah.
one. I read the first one.
Yeah.
I didn't really enjoy that one. It was too much technical math science babble, not enough story.
So I find that interesting because like the what got me interested in reading the book in the first place was like professors at university were using it to teach philosophy.
Which I think is a proper way to look at that.
Yeah.
It's more philosophical and on
Science is
ideas.
philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if anyone else here has read any books by Brian Greene, but I love his writing. And Brian Greene often talks about the philosophy of the science and how science intertwines with philosophy.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
In my mind, they are two
physics is
very
trying-
separate things.
Right.
Like the
Like-
world of
like-
physics is
like-
trying to answer those philosophical questions. Where do we come from? How the universe come to exist, right?
Right.
Yeah, but like science is like when something is stated as science, then it has gone through like the scientific process, right? It's gone through like testing, theory, hypothesis, all that stuff, and then a conclusion that is then perceived to be truth, right?
Yeah.
But like philosophy, there are like different kinds of philosophy that preach different things. Like existentialism is different from stoicism, is different from nihilism, is different from like Sioranism or whatever, however, or like Jungian psychology and all of that stuff. And it's more like theory, but then it sounds like truth because it's articulated in a way that can't be argued. But it's not necessarily science because it hasn't gone through the scientific process.
Right.
So saying the philosophy of science is very interesting to me. Like sounds like a book that I could learn something from.
Yeah, I mean, I love his writing and I've watched a lot of his videos on YouTube with World Science Festival. There's actually one I haven't gotten through yet because it's like a 2-hour World Science Festival video, but it's talking about the interconnection between the philosophical questions of the universe, where we came from, that kind of thing, and science and how they intersect and how scientists like Brian Greene are seeking answers to those questions through scientific investigation.
Is there like a specific example? Like a specific example of like an axiom of a philosophy that he tries to investigate through science?
I can't think of one specifically. A lot of what I've heard from speaking more in general terms.
Okay.
You know, generally, like I said, the questions of where did the universe come from is often a very philosophical question. But it's the world of physics that he researches and is trying to answer that question. Like we know about the Big Bang, but where the Big Bang came from, what triggered that in the first place, nobody knows, right?
Yeah.
They have some hypothetical ideas about what it could be, but
But maybe
they can't.
we don't want to know.
I think it's funny because it is kind of a core question of like, why do we need to know? If the universe is ostensibly 14 billion years old and whatnot, does it matter how the universe started?
No, but it's a question people have been asking because
exactly.
curiosity
Yeah.
drives us. And that's one of the great things about so much, whether it's fantasy books or science fiction books or fiction books, you know, these stories that we tell ourselves as a culture and society through many forms, not just books, but many forms of communicating those stories, is often rooted in using a fictional story to explore these questions that our societies and cultures have been asking for thousands of years. You know, what does it mean to be you? Where do we come from? What these ideas of God? I mean, especially in fantasy, gods make a regular appearance in fantasy, right? And it's exploring those thematic elements of how that's intersected our culture and how we speak about ourselves.